following program is brought to you by your friends at Podcast One. Welcome to RJ Bell's Dream Preview. Weekly winners from his Wiseguy Roundtable. Broadcasting from the pregame.com studios in Las Vegas. Here is RJ Bell.
NFL Week 7 edition with my Wiseguy Roundtable. The bettor, Steve Fezzik. To my right, the bookmaker, Matty Holt. To my left, I'm RJ Bell. And guys, we are excited about a jam-packed show, action-packed. We got 3 best bets, and last week another winning week on the best bets. These guys have been killing it. Also, one double like this week. They both like the same game, bookmaker and bettor. We don't just have one crossfire. We have 2 crossfires this week. We also have pros versus Joes, sharp money, couple of total picks. Man, oh man, like I said, jam-packed. And guys, I'm going to say this very quickly and we'll get to it. The feedback, we went up again over 15% last week. And for those that listen and knows at the end of the pod, we'll have another special kind of thank you for that. But I just want to thank you at a personal level. The way we're growing is you guys are spreading the word. And when you send out a link to your buddies, send it out on social media, embed it somewhere, whatever you're doing, give us, and this helps, go to your player and give us a 5-star rating like on iTunes. All of it helps to spread the word. The more money you help us make, quite frankly, because this costs money. The bigger that this thing is, the more money we can put into it. And I'll be candid, we've probably lost money directly over the years with the Dream Preview. I don't mind losing a little bit because it's such a passion project. And also we get to at least expose what we do at pregame to so many people. But obviously with any business, there's a budget. There's only so much you can spend. The more views and listeners we have, the more we can spend. And the more time we can spend, as they say, time is money. So thank you so much. Let's get straight to it this week. Game number 1 that we're going over, we've got, well, this one is a power ratings disagreement. And it's Steve Fezzik against, well, a guy named Colin Cowherd. Colin Cowherd has the Seattle Seahawks as the 3rd best team in the NFL. Fez, you disagree.
Yeah, I've got them as the 6th best team, but I'm kind of concerned I got them too high, RJ. Let's explain my concerns with Seattle. Really one game. When they played at the LA Rams, the Rams dominated that entire game, but everything just went wrong. Not that Seattle beat them. The Rams beat themselves. The running back early on the first drive reaches the ball for the pylon. It rolls out of his hand, out of the end zone, touchback. The Rams dominated the statistics, should have won that game. Seattle is always a team that comes on in November and December. They're never belonging in the top of the power ratings in October. They're a team that gels later on. Their stats are very mediocre. Yards per play differential right about that of a 500 football team. No way Seattle should be in the top 3.
Fez disagrees with Colin. I do too. You know, Matty, this is a great example of what I talk about narrative. If we went into the season thinking Seattle was going to win 5 games, if they had the exact same season so far, we'd be looking at them like the Jets, as in, record's not bad, played bad here, weak offensive line. And, you add it up, there's nothing, and correct me if I'm wrong, objectively, if this was like in the NCAA tournament and a blind, kind of a blind resume, what is it on Seattle's resume, other than their pedigree, based on this year's performance, it could even have them as a top 10 team?
I don't think there is anything. I think
you agree with that, Fez?
Absolutely. They've been lucky, actually. They got a plus turnover differential. They have an easy schedule. There's a lot to not like about Seattle.
I mean, they are still holding on to those 2 Super Bowl appearances with basically this team. And the fact that they've won some games, and some of these final scores, to Fez's point, are really not indicative of the games. I also thought they should have lost to the Rams, which is why I was on the Rams again this past week. But not only that game, they were down 15-10 to Indianapolis at halftime. The Colts completely implode, and and they start turning the ball over, and that score gets out of whack. But this is not the same Seattle Seahawks team that went to 2 Super Bowls.
And anyone that watches the games knows the O-line is a big problem for Seattle, and that makes Russell Wilson more conservative. I mean, to me, when you have such a deficiency in one position group, it's hard to sometimes make up for it, quite frankly, and because you try to compensate for it, and then that the compensation hurts you. Let me quickly talk about the narrative, and then we'll get into the game. When a team is supposed to be good and they don't play good, as soon as they play good for a half or two, it's like, oh, see, that's the team. That's what we were waiting on. And if you think a team is bad, they can play good 80% of the time, but the 20% is bad. See, that's the problem. And I think if you objectively, and I think it's an interesting question, guys, that if you disagree, tweet us, go to pregame.com in the forum, start a thread. We can talk about it. But if you just look blindly at Seattle, what part of their stats, what part of their record, what part of their scores makes them more than, a top 10 team even? So I agree with you, disagree with my friend Colin. We're objective here in Vegas. I think Seattle's overrated. Let's talk about the game. Opened up a 7.5-point favorite at New York. Now a 5.5-point favorite. Seattle is on the road. I'm going to open with a question, Fez. What the heck happened? As we say on our Fox show nationally on Friday and Saturday night, WTF, that Giants domination seemingly was one of the most surprising games of the last couple years.
Absolutely. 2 things happened. The Broncos came in completely flat. It's a game of emotion. We talk about that. These players see the point spread. They knew they were laying 13
on a Sunday night game in front of the world.
And they took it for granted that they were going to go ahead and win that game. Absolutely. And then coupled with the fact that Simeon just played a very poor game on top of it, they could live with one of those 2 factors. They could not win given both.
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I think it starts right away, right? You come out of the game, you go, oh, all the offensive weapons for the Giants are hurt. Then the Giants come out and Eli's making throws to his tight end, Evan Ingram's. Orleans Darkwa is actually running the ball because everyone in the NFL is talented. And if you don't come with 100% effort, this is what any team with any players in the NFL can actually do to you here. And that's what happened. Then all of a sudden they got down and they tried to get out of their offensive rhythm running the ball, and we saw Trevor Siemian make critical mistakes in that football game.
Is there any part of what the Giants did that really impresses? What did you do in your power ratings with the Giants, Fez?
Yeah, I popped them up a point just because they brought in a running back that, frankly, I had never heard of before, and the kid looked real good, and it goes back to what Matty was saying. Hey, you're in the NFL. There's a lot of gems out there that people are unaware of.
Giants, other than that running back, Matt, any upgrade? I mean, how are you thinking about them?
Well, I like the fact that, early in the year, they were going to make a conscious effort to get the ball to Evan Ingram, and we saw it early in the Detroit game where he scored a touchdown. That was the only touchdown they scored all game. Then for a couple weeks, he disappeared as Eli was trying to get the ball to these receivers who finally all came back. They went out and they went back to that, that simple game plan again. Run the ball with our Orleans Darkwa, throw the ball to our ultra-talented tight end, Evan Ingram, and let's see what we can do. It worked, right? They simplified the offense. It kept Eli from making mistakes, and they allowed the other team to make mistakes in that game.
Okay, Fez actually has one of his only total play on this game. We're going to get back to that in a minute. We let each of the boys have one total, one best bet, one pass, and then in every other game, they have to lean or like. And like means I like. Wonder Year style, right? Do you like me? Okay. Winnie Cooper, like you. Or lean is, hey, listen, we're not betting this game, but this line might be a half point this way. Might as well tell you guys because a lot of you are going to bet some of these games if we tell you to or not. So, Matty, in this game, lean or like?
I'm going to lean Seattle, and I know I just talked up what the Giants did last week, simplifying the offense, but you can't simplify the offense every week against really complex and sophisticated defenses and win in the NFL. And Seattle does have a really sophisticated defense here, coming off a bye. There's still so many injuries for the Giants. I just don't think they have the weapons to put up enough points, although there's been more teams win this year scoring 20 or less points than we've seen in over a decade. It's not a recipe for success long term. I think Seattle's probably the right side here.
Lean Seattle, Matty Holt. before the total, Fez, any thoughts on the side?
I'm passing on the side.
All right, give us your total.
I'm going to the well with another Giants under. It worked for us as a bet on the podcast, the Dream Pod, last week. The Giants, they grounded and pounded. They gave the ball to Darkwa, and they turned it over their defense to beat Denver. Well, I see Seattle as being a fairly comparable team to Denver, a below-average offense, a very good defense, and the fact the Giants were able to beat Denver with that game plan, I think they duplicate it, but not with the same success. So they run the ball a whole lot, getting very few points, but I think the Giants' defense much more motivated than we thought for a dead team at 0-5. I could see this one going every bit as under as the Giants game last week.
All right, so we're seeing 40 on this one?
We are.
Okay. Matty, any thoughts on the total? Agree, disagree, anything?
I mean, I would only play it under. I understand that there have been a lot of unders this year. And again, teams are winning games scoring less than we've seen in the last 3 years. I just don't like to bet under 40 in NFL games in the passing era that we're in.
Fez, we mentioned Best Bet's been red hot here on the Dream Preview NFL edition. Also, though, you won that under in the Giants last week. We had someone tweet me a ticket. Did you see this? He had, $3 dimes on it? 3,000?
Yeah, I think 3,200 to win 2,900.
And actually, I retweeted that ticket. So on Twitter, you can follow me.
His Twitter handle is @RJ in Vegas.
That's right, Stephen A. @RJ in Vegas. And I got that ticket out. But it just got me thinking. I wonder, we're up well over 6 figures of listeners now. Is how many, when we win, and I guess it's scary because losing is going to happen 45% of the time at minimum, right? If you're a new listener, 55% is the goal of a professional batter. That's how he lives in a big house and doesn't have a boss, is 55%. Is with the winners, the losers, I wonder how many hundreds of thousands of dollars are swinging because of this pod.
I don't know. I'm sure my boss doesn't.
Yeah, well, yeah. We're giving too much good information. Well, I'm not going to stop, man. I'm always suspicious of bookmakers, Matty. You know that much. All right, next game, we're going Sunday Night Football. We want to lead with the big games, and we end with the best bets. We've got the Super Bowl rematch, and that's going to be my question. Patriots now favored by 3.5. Little reduced juice there. So let's say 3.4 maybe would be the way to think about it. How does revenge affect this game?
To me, there's something that's more important than revenge here. I think
okay.
It's one of the motivating factors, but I think the biggest factor for me is what the heck is up with the Atlanta Falcons in the second half of football games. And to me, the second half of football games come down to coaching. You come out with talent in the first half, you score. They were up 17-0 against Miami. They were in there with Buffalo. The reason they can't score in the second half of these football games is other teams are making adjustments, and they're missing Shanahan as their coordinator, and now they're not making the proper adjustments themselves in the second half, and their offense is completely falling to pieces in second half of football games the last month.
Okay, so let's set the revenge aside a second. Matty took over as host there. Now I'll defer. Is Sarkisian, right? This is another example. I came in the season, and we actually did, for those that haven't seen it, and if you're listening before Thursday night, we did a bonus Thursday night standalone, and I put that out on my Twitter and also on SoundCloud. So if you haven't listened to it and it's before the game, we separated that to make it simple for that easy early Thursday listening. And we were talking about the idea the Raiders, wise guys were down on them. They started the season hot. We ate a little crow. Well, now we see we were right. The Falcons, I thought Super Bowl hangover. I also thought, boy, this Shanahan. Because no one was excited about the Falcons entering last year. He seemed to make the difference. What are you seeing? Fez, you've been high on the Falcons. It was just like a week ago you had them, tied for the best team in football, right?
I still have them tied for second. I got to tell you, I'm concerned about my ratings. I probably have them overrated. I'm in love with their stats. They still look like a Super Bowl team from a pure statistical basis, but I think that might be flawed.
Do we agree Sarkisian is a question mark right now as OC?
I completely agree. I think he's a major question mark.
And my concerns are in the red zone. You look at all this yardage to get more than 6 yards per play. Where are the points? And the last 2 games, losing to Buffalo, in the end game, losing to Miami, they just don't look to have the creativity, coming down the field that they had under Shanahan.
I've always believed the red zone had a huge element of luck in it. Turnovers have luck. Close wins have luck. I look to fade extremes either way with those. I also tend to think if you can march between the 20s and you're not scoring, well, it only takes 3 or 4 plays, 3rd and 4, third and goal to go from the 4 to go one way or the other to make those stats really skewed early in the year. How do you guys balance the undebatable luck factor in red zone stats with the fact that sometimes defensively and offensively, the way a team plays can be good or bad for the red zone? So sometimes it's luck, sometimes it's scheme.
Well, I dismissed it as being bad luck, but I think I may be biased by how good Atlanta was last year, saying, if the stats are still there, they'll turn it around. And the more I think about the Shanahan being gone, I'm worried.
All right, but real quick, before we get to Matty, let's say you have 10 teams in the course of a season that you see have extreme red zone stats, good or bad, offense or defense. What percentage after you dig in do you say, wow, this is something? And what percentage do you say, probably luck?
70% luck.
Okay, so only about 1 in 3 where there's extreme red zone stats, you think there's merit to those extreme stats.
Right, where maybe bad play calling or just they don't have a weapon in the red zone that they can effectively use.
Same question, Matty.
Yeah, I agree that most of it's luck. I mean, we saw the Denver Broncos the first couple weeks have like the best red zone efficiency we had seen in 4 years. And of course, that came back to the mean as we thought it would. But what really concerns me here is that second half play. It's not just red zone play, and it's not the fact that Matt Ryan has as many touchdowns as interceptions. That doesn't bother me. We can attribute some of those interceptions to luck.
And you talked about this. Pro Football Focus has a stat about balls that should have been intercepted and balls that are intercepted that maybe shouldn't have been tip passes or whatever. I think the stat, and I'm going by memory, Matt Ryan has 6 INTs and 4 of them are unfair and only 2 were his fault.
That's right. So you can attribute some luck to the interceptions, but I think there's a significant trend here throughout the entire season that as teams make adjustments at halftime to what Atlanta's doing, Atlanta is not making any adjustments coming out, and their offense is stagnating in the second half. Game after game after game, 17-0 against Miami. They never score again.
And easily second halves could be luck too, but now we have a coach that we question his chops at the chalkboard, and now that it seems like 2 areas where that those flashes of brilliance as a coach matter that maybe a Shanahan had, one being in the red zone, the other being in second half adjustments. It's the 2 areas Atlanta's deficient at. Could still be luck, but there's some logic behind it.
And maybe it's not all Sarkisian. Hey, let's face it. In the Super Bowl, what did the Atlanta Falcons do? Completely folded in the second half. But we're seeing that completely fold in the second half happen game after game after game.
Host Matty, that's a good segue. I did, Fez, want to talk about revenge here. Super Bowl revenge, the worst loss, the giveaway loss in Super Bowl history for the Falcons. I think that in talk radio land, that's going to be the talk. How much merit do you give it?
Oh, I think it has merit. I think more merit in the first half. The initial, we've got this game circled all year long. So maybe you look, if you like Atlanta, maybe you look to them in the first half. But I got to tell you, RJ, what happens if they take the lead and then start slipping away? There's always that feeling about here we go again.
Well, that makes another point. If we believe there's a chance, I think unequivocally there's a chance that the second half is by merit, that there's a real problem here. And if we believe the emotional advantage, if it's there, is going to be early in the game, it does look like first half if you do like the Falcons.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Okay, so let's go to our leaner like. Matty, is it okay if you go first?
Sure, and I'm going to like the Falcons' first half in this game.
Oh, no, wait a minute. Did you have that before?
No,
you didn't have that written down. So I convinced you.
Yeah, I like that side first half. I just think that they have real problems in the second half. And I'm not a believer that the Atlanta Falcons are any better than the New England Patriots. In fact, there's only 2 teams that are in the top 5 in both run and pass success percentage. So the percentage of plays that you run the ball that are successful, the percentage of plays where you pass the ball that are successful. Only 2 teams are in the top 5 in both. Atlanta, number 1 in run, number 5 in pass. New England, number 1 in run, number 5 in pass. And the Falcons, number 4 in run success rate and number 4 in pass success rate.
All right, so we got a audible call, a like in the first half of the Falcons. Fezzik are like,
I'm going to lean to New England, and I'm going to lean to New England in the third quarter and the second half come over the top because I do like the aspect of New England having their number and Atlanta struggling in the second half. This New England offense, RJ, it could be absolutely historically good. Remember what the narrative is. Their receivers are always injured. These guys like Hogan, Amendola, always banged up. Those aren't even their good receivers anymore. Gronk is back. Cooks is getting 20 yards per pass reception right now. He's the kid they got it from New Orleans. Brady looks like he's 30. So I have every confidence New England is the best offense easily in the NFL. And that New England defense, statistically, it's the worst team still defensively in a yards per play. RJ, leap of faith. They've got too much talent. They've had too many blown coverages. I'm moving them up weekly in my expectations. Hopefully it will play out.
Now listen, where else are you going to get third quarter on the Pats, first half on the Falcons? Well, I'll answer that question for you. Only in dreams on the Dream Preview, you get that stuff from the bettor and the bookmaker. Last question on this game. And guys, for new listeners, very unusual that it's first half, third quarter. It was fun. Usually, though, it's going to be the full game. Is maybe that's a new thing we'll do. In fact, it's official, is you get one derivative play a week. And with Fez, that's gold, baby. Those derivatives. I always try to buy into those. He says, there's not enough. I bet my limit. So, but you guys can take advantage. All right. Here's what worries me. With the Pats, Belichick had 10 days to take over that D, put the whistle on. All right, boys, sheriff's in town. And if you look at that Jets game, that defense was problematic. Talking or listening to Mike Lombardi is, he said that Jets missed a bunch of open guys. You talked about blown coverage. So if 10 days and the Jets can make you look bad, maybe we got to accept maybe that the Pats D isn't as bad as historically their stats have been, especially the first couple of weeks. But I mean, does this D have a decent chance to even get to average? I don't think so.
By the end of the year, I think it does. I mean, under the genius, but that's at the end of the year. Do they have a chance to get to average by Halloween? No chance.
What do you think, Manny?
I think at this point we have to acknowledge the fact that this Patriots defense, which was so good for a couple of years, it is not good yet. But to Fez's point, look, there's some young players. There's a lot of new players. They could be good by the end of the year. But to even say that they're not in the bottom five right now would be a gross, overstatement.
And real quick, I do lean to the over here. I think it's important to note the Super Bowl total was 58.5 when New England had the number one scoring defense in the league. This total is only 55, and they have the worst defense statistically in the league.
Yeah, but you don't have all the squares batting it up, right? So which is why maybe there's a mispricing, or maybe this is right and there was a mispricing in the Super Bowl too. All right, next game we're going to go. Very last point is what confuses me, and I don't think there's an answer to this, so I'm going to ask it rhetorically. Chuck Noll won 4 Super Bowls in 6 years, and then he went through his 60s with the Steelers hardly making the playoffs. Bradshaw retired in 83. I can still remember that last throw against the Jets, hurt his elbow. I was a big fan at 13. And Chuck Noll was really not good for about a decade. What is it that allows could you imagine a time Belichick is an average coach? Because, what was Chuck Noll in 1990? He was an average coach. And I get that 30's the new, or 40's the new 30 and all that, but it makes you just, I don't know the answer, but it just seems like that if it's nutrition, if it's who knows what, that people don't drop off the way they used to. And we know athletically they don't. Look at Brady, look at LeBron, right? LeBron's like the age now that Bird was when he retired. Now, Bird had a hurt back, but still, LeBron never seems to have an injury. It is interesting as we keep moving decades and decades into the future is how a lot of our past history just isn't applicable. I remember Bill Simmons talking about, has Belichick lost his fastball, right? Which is the euphemism, is he too old to put in 70 hours a week? And that was like 5 or 6 years ago. he was asking that question. Or maybe Belichick's just a freak, right? We know he is in some ways. All right, next game, Monday Night Football. In prep, you guys were talking a bunch about revenge, and I was confused by it. So I'm just going to let you explain it.
Well, I think that here's a spot, right? In the opening week of the season, Philadelphia goes into Washington and beats them up pretty good, ends up winning the game by double digits there. It was fairly tight down the end, and a turnover makes it a double-digit game. Washington's going to remember that game. I think if you could say, hey, give me 3 teams that after week 1 have been better than your expectations week 2 through 6, the Washington Redskins would make that list of 3. This offensive and defensive line upgrades on both lines are real. They're real. They've made a significant impact. The wins and losses haven't been there for the Redskins, but they also have the number 1 strength of schedule in the entire NFL. You know, this is a division game against a rival who you hate and want to beat, who beat you on your home field. I think the Redskins have all the motivational edge in this game.
Yeah, I agree strongly. I think that what happened week 1, it'd be one thing if they lost the game by a field goal, but I love misleading finals. We talk about it all the time in college football. Here's a case either team could have won, but the narrative is, oh, the Eagles blew out the Redskins week 1. And because of that, this game gets circled. Washington knows they could have won that game. Their stats are tremendous year to date, better than the Eagles. The Eagles have had some defensive injuries as well. And it goes back to kind of like how the Chiefs were. When the Chiefs got 5 games above 500, I said, they just can't be that good. And now the Eagles are 5 games above 500. And I'm saying, you know what? They're going to come back at some point. They're not going 14-2. This looks like a game that they could lose as a 5-point favorite.
Now, it strikes me, I've been quick to kind of say I was wrong. I'm going to wait. I was not high on Kirk Cousins this year. And I'm not even sure if I'm even close to being wrong in that one yet. But you got to give this team credit. This Washington team has exceeded expectations. I agree. You talked about a misleading final in week 1. How would you characterize that, Fez?
In terms of who should have won, maybe the Eagles by 2 points.
Well, I could tell you that it was a turnover at the end of the game. Washington was down 5. They had a sack fumble that turned into a touchdown that led the game to be 12 or 13 by them going for 2 instead of 12 instead of 5. So okay. The Redskins with the ball driving down 5 to maybe win the football game.
So the misleading part was one play made a big difference on the scoreboard.
Yes.
Okay, good stuff. Now, you guys both lean Washington, and since you hinted at it, we won't kind of make it like or lean. Well, you both lean Washington. Let's talk Philly real quick. Colin Cowherd, number 1 team in the NFL. Now, listen, Colin's a brilliant broadcaster. He understands KC, Philly's close. Make it Philly. You're going to get a lot more social media on it. We're talking about it, right? There you go. Fez, you're not that far off, though. Where do you got Philly?
Yeah, I got Philly just a half point behind Kansas City. They're my number 2 team, tied for second with a bunch of teams in the NFL. And this was my dark horse team to go to the Super Bowl.
On Colin Cowherd's podcast, you gave it out.
I did. And now I like the fact that Colin is talking about how the Eagles are his dark horse team before the season started to make the Super
when you're
Bowl.
An expert, you're whispering in the king's ear. That's just the way it goes. Let's say that. That's fair. Okay, thoughts on where do you have the Eagles, Matty?
I think they are top 5. The one thing I question is their defensive secondary, which has had some injuries, and even when they've all been healthy, has been a little bit suspect. But when Fletcher Cox has been 100% healthy and in the lineup, their pass rush has been plenty healthy enough. And that offense has been absolutely spectacular. Carson Wentz has been great all year. That defensive secondary for me still has a little holes, but they're certainly top 5.
Next game, Ravens at Vikings. Vikings by 5.5. Fez, this is our underrated injury game of the week. A lot of injuries. The market prices properly. Some, though, they undervalue, especially when it's not a big name.
Yeah, so Minnesota, their number 1 wide receiver, Diggs, is really good. And the market really doesn't move if he's in or out, but I think it absolutely should. And a big part of that, let's think about the Vikings. Really good team on defense. Solid. Good coaching staff with Zimmer. But they lose Bradford. Capable backup. They lose Cook, their rookie running back, who really is a fine running back. So they're losing all their weapons if Diggs doesn't play. It's a much better team, I think. They really need their number 1 wide receiver.
And even without Diggs, You lean Minnesota.
I do, and it's all about, I think Baltimore is overvalued. You look at last week, they lost to a Bears team. RJ, they really got blown out in that game. They got a punt return touchdown, and they got a kickoff return touchdown. And not only did they get both, you could argue, well, maybe they got really good special teams, but their kick returner, Rainey, he falls down. The contact is made on him. He runs. He hits his own player. He falls down. Everyone just walks away. He stands up and he runs 70 yards for a touchdown. As fluky a touchdown as you will ever see. A phony final score.
So Minnesota's a team you generally like, but without Diggs, you're losing some value because the market's not properly adjusting. Baltimore, based on pedigree, based on some faulty finals, overrated, added up, lean many.
Yeah, lean many. Diggs might play. If Diggs plays, I like many.
Oh, interesting. All right. And remember, guys, we tape on Wednesday afternoon here in Vegas, and all that's the information we have. And when there is kind of an if-then, we'll give it to you. Matty, lean or like?
I lean Minnesota, and I'm with Fez on this one. I really like the Vikings at home. I like Diggs. I think he's important to the team just because he stretches the defense a little bit because he's the one deep ball threat. But even without him, I lean Minnesota, almost liked Minnesota. Baltimore 30th in the NFL in yards per play on offense. That offense has been decimated by injuries, age, and regression, and there's not a lot of positive things to say about it. Going on the road to one of the toughest stadiums to play in the NFL against the top 5 defense in the NFL, and you can make a case that Minnesota at home is a top 3 defense. I'm always going to lean Minnesota in this case.
Okay, so last question. If you look at the quarterback ratings, and we know those are imperfect, Flacco is one of the worst quarterbacks in the league. We know the center retired. We know the left guard is out. I mean, is this Flacco without players around him? Is this Flacco's age? What's with Flacco?
I think
What's
it's a
the
combination.
F with Flacco?
I think it's a combination of his age, his deterioration in skills, playing in a black and blue division where he's got too many injuries. I also think it's a deterioration of their offensive line and the weapons around him. I mean, you could make a case that no team in the preseason suffered more critical injuries than the Baltimore Ravens.
And you look at a guy who had some pretty darn good mobility, would roll out of the pocket. Now when he's rolling out, it looks like me out there. He's wobbling to the left, wobbling to the right, barely moving. Contrast that with the Bears' Trubisky.
That's you at the Fiesta buffet.
Going at back for seconds and thirds for the chicken wings. The Trubisky, when he rolls out, it's a thing of beauty. He's just flowing along, looking downfield. He's ready to take off for the first down. Wow. If Flacco was in a race against Trubisky, I think I would lay a second and 100.
You know, one time they asked Sylvester Stallone, why do you date young girls or, relatively young? And he was, before he got married, I don't know much about his dating history, but it seemed like a lot of young girls. And his answer was, well, why do people take home puppies? Just saying.
Now you've got something, a sound bite that talks about a cheesy joke.
I'm just quoting Stallone. It's not me.
Maybe he's a baker.
All right. I do find it fascinating that a quarterback like Flacco, where you never would have thought his physical or his nimbleness or his speed of foot were a differentiator. But what I found is the guys like a Bernie Kosar, like a Bird, who are deficient to start with, when they lose some, they get to the point where it's like there's a tipping point. It becomes untenable for them to be a professional at that level. And I'm not saying Flacco's reached that point, though he's got some bad stats. You got to wonder, would the Ravens, how freaking ballsy would it have been for the Ravens to win that Super Bowl and let Flacco go? And because at that point they knew, contemporaneously people were saying this contract's going to hamstring, or we will be hamstrung, whatever, the Ravens for the next X years. And hasn't that exactly turned out to be the case? That contract's like an albatross.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to mention injuries. And injuries are a little unpredictable. Danny Woodhead, there was Dixon, their running back. They lost a lot of guys.
Yeah, but when you're thin because of
That's right.
one quarterback getting all the money, a couple injuries hurt you a lot more, right?
Agreed.
And that's part of the reason that the Patriots keep excelling. They have no loyalty to most of their players.
Well, if you're honest about that, it's hard to blame them, right? Hey, we're going to do what's best for us. You do what's best for you. It's only when you give that fault that, that's maybe one of the, maybe the greatest line in sports movie history, North Dallas 40. All right. Have you guys both seen that? They're nodding on a podcast. I'm here to commentate, Vin Scully style. They are nodding. Is when he says, every time you tell me it's a game, or so how's that go now? It's every time I say it's a game, you tell me it's a business. And every time I tell you it's business, you say it's a game. And to me, that's the teams that, and Nick Nolte was the, beaten down wide receiver in that movie, is the Patriots saying this is a business. We love you, and after we'll bring you back, retire your jersey. You can hang out around practice, but this is a business because there's a finite amount of salary cap dollars. And to me, if you're honest about it, I got no problem with it. But the teams that are acting like it's more than that, but then when it comes time to be cutthroat, they are, I think that's the problem.
No, I agree. And look, that's been the NFL is the only league where the hard salary cap is actually intact. The NBA has this one, but the Cleveland Cavaliers could pay as much luxury tax as they want and then just build whatever team they want. In the NFL, it really means something. Salary cap, expertise is maybe the most important thing to keeping a franchise stable.
You could argue Eli Manning was a similar situation, but somehow his defense won him another Super Bowl after he won the first one.
Yeah, but Eli at that point was certainly a top 10. I think we're mixing up the debate. Was Eli elite or not? I think no one disagrees he was top third of the league, right? When he won that second Super Bowl.
He was right on the cusp of top third.
Yeah, so means you're top third. You can win with Eli at that teardrop pass he threw in that second Super Bowl was one of the great Manningham was, I can't remember, but it was one of the great. I remember it was the left sidelines. That was one of the great throws in Super Bowl history, right? Now, a guy can get lucky, but I mean, Manning today is very different than Manning was in that game. Pregame.com. I'm RJ Bell. Wiseguy Roundtable. The bettor Steve Fezzik, the bookmaker Matty Holt. Oh, I love it. Pros versus Joes. I'm usually with the pros. Let's see what the boys got this week. It's Jacksonville on the road, favored by 3 with a lot of juice, almost 3.5 at the Colts. Right now, the pros, me and the pros are on the Colts, and the Joes are on the Jags. Matty Holt, lean or like?
I'm going to lean Jacksonville here in this spot.
All right, explain your square handicap.
Look, Jacksonville coming off the short week here, obviously playing on Monday night. And we talk about the New England Patriots defense being bad. This Indianapolis Colts defense is bad, has been bad, was supposed to be bad. And now we get the news that Andrew Luck is not going to continue to practice. He had a setback. This team basically is Jacoby Brissett and nothing. And they're getting old. Frank Gore's old. They're old at every position. They're bad on both lines. It's a team that you could back situationally, but on short rest, off, with a team with Jacksonville coming off a loss. Jacksonville is covered, I believe, against the spread after every loss this season. I don't want to buck that trend.
I thought a lot you said made sense until the very end is the fact that they're alternating covers and not covers with 6 games doesn't mean all that much. I think they've been
reacting well off losses too.
Yeah. Here's the question with the Jags is can they win without relying on Bortles? That's what you got to ask yourself entering every game with them. And I think in this case, the whole Colts idea of being even worse than they seem, though Brissett's probably better than people expected, I think for sure. Before we go to Fez, is give it. I didn't hear the stat. Maybe you gave it. Indy's defense, quantify for us how bad they are.
I think that if you're saying that we'd all agree that Patriots are still probably number 32 right now in the league. Indy's 31, and they're terrible against the run. Jacksonville runs the ball probably as good as any team in the NFL.
That's interesting, too, because Jacksonville, both on offense and defense, has the biggest home or run-pass splits I've seen. Jags are great against the run. Oh, I'm sorry, check that. Against the pass. And they're bad against the run. So that makes me think the Colts are going to be able to at least try to run here. I like the under in this game. All right, Fez, this is pros versus Joes. So far, we've got me and the pros on the Colts, Matty and the Joes on the Jags. Lean or like?
I lean to Jacksonville. I think you look at this Indianapolis team.
You can't. Don't talk over Louis, man. It's not going to happen. Go.
Look at these Indianapolis defensive stats. Matty correctly said, hey, they're the second worst team in the league year to date in stats. I'll argue they're easily the worst D right now in terms of the talent. You just saw Mariota carve him up, a guy who could not roll out at all. The whole Tennessee offense.
So you're saying physically limited with his legs?
Yeah, they literally kept him in the pocket. The whole offense of Tennessee is predicated upon ground and pound, read option, rollout, and the quarterback was unable to run, and they still, they shouldn't have put up the 32 or the 36. They should have put up the 29, but they had great success. At the end of the year, I don't understand this line. Jacksonville's going 8-8. Indianapolis is going 3-13. If you want to take +3 on a team that's going 3-13 against an 8-8 team, I've got an 8-point differential in terms of my power ratings. That's blinking a buy sign on Jacksonville. I think this line, if the sharps took +3, they're not very sharp because I think it goes up.
Well, that's obviously why you like the other side. I can't lie, is when I picked the square versus sharp or pros versus Joe's game, and I looked over and saw you guys both on the other side, that was my happiest moment of the day.
And remember, this whole Andrew Luck news is just breaking. We just found out today, hey, Luck is...
You ever notice when he gets bucked by any kind of authority, he handicaps like triple his long? He just keeps going and going.
But let me ask you, RJ, how big a deal is that all of a sudden the memo goes out to the team?
9,
hey,
8, 7,
our season
6,
is
5,
over.
4, 3, 2, 1.
That's it, Fez, you're done. You like that one, Matty?
Yeah.
That's pretty good. I'll hit you with the countdown,
I'm
too.
sure.
So from here on, we're going to call when it's a square play, hit him with Huey. You like that?
Hey.
Now, Fez, it seems like it actually upsets you at a fundamental level. Like your whole self-image is being sharp.
I couldn't believe this game was square. We had to question you when you said this was the pros versus Joe.
Well, it'll upset me more if on Sunday I'm staring and the line hasn't moved and it's still 3, and then I'll immediately think I missed something on this game.
Last serious question on this one is, could we agree with the following? If the Jags are playing a team that can't run, because they have a problem defending the run. So if they're playing an offense that can't run, and if they're playing a defense that can't stop the run, they're in great. I mean, it feels like there's no other team where finding that pass run and seeing where the strengths and weaknesses are probably matter most with the Jags, because in both cases, their ability to defend the run in the pass and their ability to run and pass is some of the most extreme splits I've seen. And if you look at the Football Outsiders, they agree with that.
Yeah, that's a great point. And you look no further than the Pittsburgh game where the Steelers kept throwing the ball down the field against that great Jag secondary.
Okay, next game. This is this is a public pounder. All right, we pick 1 or 2 games a week the public's just going wild on, and also a total game. This is a total game from Matty Holt, and it's the Tennessee Titans favored by 5.5 and a little extra juice at the Browns. 90% of the tickets, 92% of the cash on Tennessee. Now, you can go to pregame.com and click Game Center and look at the consensus tab, pregame.com, Game Center, consensus tab, and you can see the cash and ticket splits. Nowhere else in the world can you see the cash for free. Nowhere. Check that out. Public pounder. We're going to do side first, Fez, lean or like.
This is my one pass. I'll take it.
All right, so let's talk. Good point. Let's talk Kaiser, because to me, that's the only. I've been on the Browns the last 2 weeks, and I've had a great season so far. I think I'm 58% with Adam Carolla, and I do his show every Wednesday. And remember, Adam and his digital family, we're part of here with the Podcast One and the Dream Preview, and we get to promote on his show. And we do like 20 minutes, right? Adam likes to get off in politics and Kaepernick and flag the anthem. So I enjoy it because I'm a big fan of Adam. I've been on the Browns last 2 weeks. You loved the Browns last week, Fez. You had an amazing football season, but you loved the Browns. You only text me like 5 or 6 times a year, like on Sunday morning, and you text me on the Browns Sunday.
I gave you the blue horseshoe loves the Cleveland Browns as the line moved down from 10 all the way to 7.
The pros were pounding it.
The feeling Kaiser can't play a lick. Hogan's a capable backup. Maybe he got injured. I know he got hurt during the game, but the Browns just didn't show up. It was just a debacle.
So here's the question. Hogan's a memory, all right, we're back to Kaiser. Now, Kaiser, before he was benched, had the worst season this century. Using quarterback rating, he had a 49. No quarterback this century for any given season has had below 50. That's Joey Harrington. That's Jamarcus Russell. That's Ryan Leaf. Vince Young had I think he had a 67 or something was his quarterback rating through his career. A lot of people on Twitter was pushing back. Vince Young was good. Okay, well, he certainly was good in college. If you had the worst quarterback this century, you bench him. Now he's starting to hate tweet on your team, and now he feels like there's no confidence around him. And then he starts. Wouldn't we expect him to be worse?
I agree. I think he's worse.
And maybe it's a segue into the total.
And that's why I had to play the under in this game. I think he can I'm surprised they didn't go with Cody Kessler here. And I also agree with Fez that I thought maybe, the backup last week got hurt, and that's why we're seeing the change back. Because rarely do you bench a quarterback and go right back to him because you already crushed his confidence. And he was so bad. I thought they'd go with Cody Kessler. They didn't. They're going right back to Kaiser. How are they going to score points? And another point that Fez made earlier was that Marcus Mariota is unable to move out of the pocket still. So much of their offense is predicated on them being able to move the pocket and him being a dual threat quarterback, and that is not the case yet for the Tennessee Titans offense. And this isn't the Indianapolis Colts in Tennessee this week. It's on the road with a short week of preparation. It's hard for me to imagine there's going to be a ton of scoring in this game, especially getting over 47 points.
Fez, you agree with that one?
Strongly agree. Really like it. They're going to work with Kaiser, say, look, you can't be throwing 2 interceptions for every touchdown. Protect the ball. And what's Tennessee going to say? Hey, short work week. You only got 6 days, Mariota. Don't re-aggravate the hamstring. Ground and pound DeMarco Murray and Patrick Henry. But you know what? They're not playing the Indianapolis defense anymore. They're playing the Cleveland has a good above average defense. This one has 20 to 14 written all over it.
I tell you. The handicap, I love the idea of not only is Mariota not as mobile, but they're going to protect him. So he will be less effective and more conservative. Yeah, sharp play.
And you're bringing back a quarterback who you can't let him throw 3 interceptions. You can't let Deshaun Kaiser throw 3 picks a game. You have to simplify the game plan, get any little wins you can. He completed 3 screen passes, everything. I think they're going to be really conservative on both sides of the ball.
And Tennessee got away with it Monday night. They just kept him in the pocket, didn't run any of that read option, didn't need it, still won the game. Hey, if you could beat Indianapolis that way, we should be able to beat Cleveland that way. Same thing.
And I love that you passed this game, Fez, because the Browns, and there's a trend we'll talk about in my best bet, little tease ahead, is winless teams 0-4 or worse, 0-4, 0-5, 0-6 are 56% against the spread the last 30 years. The public just doesn't want any part of them. Thus, they're cheap. But if a quarterback is not an NFL level quarterback, you cannot play in 2017 on that team. I'm not playing the Browns until I see them have an NFL level quarterback. Okay, boys, first time ever. 2 crossfires coming up. Crossfire is when the bettor and the bookmaker both like the game, but they like opposite sides. And this is an homage to the old CNN show. I don't particularly like CNN these days, but back in the day, had some good stuff. Crossfire was quite interesting. And game number 1, it's going to be the Jets versus the Dolphins. Right now, we've got the Dolphins minus 3.5, even money at home, minus 3.5, even money. Fez, you go first.
I like the Miami Dolphins here, and a little bit of a leap of faith. I'll be the first to admit their stats are terrible, but I really think Irma messed this team up bad. Remember, before the season even started, Irma rolled in. They went out to Oxnard, California, practiced there, beat the Chargers, who are looking better than we thought. But by the time they came home, they absolutely were disrupted. They went to New York. They got blown out by the Jets, so they got blowout revenge. Then they had to go to London, and they got blown out by the Saints. They weren't ready to go in that game as well. We projected improvement in Cutler. We have not seen it yet. I think we are going to see it eventually. I think they have their mojo back. Big upset win against Atlanta. So I really think at the end of the year, the Jets are going to be 5-11, and Miami's the better team. They're going to be more like 6-9-1.
Fez likes the Dolphins. I agree with you. When you can identify an external factor that's affecting a team and that factor is gone at a certain point, right, the fatigue, then you got to say, okay, they're probably going to be underrated because people are just going to look at the stats and the record and not account for the factor. Generally, I like that concept. Matty Holt.
Look, it's nice to be able to throw out stats when we want to use them and then say, hey, I don't want to use the stats anymore, but the Miami Dolphins are dead last in the entire NFL in yards per play on offense. This team can't score. If not for the Atlanta Falcons' ineptitude to play football in the second half, it was 17-0 last week at halftime. This team is not moving the football. And if there's one thing we can all consensusly say in this room on this pod, the New York Jets are a much better football team than anybody gave them credit for starting the season, especially Fez, who said they were starting to tank, especially all those bettors who bet them under 4 at -300. The Jets are a lot better team than people think. They're trying really hard. And this is a division game with greater than a field goal differential with the worst offense in the NFL.
Wowza. There's some good stuff. Any rebuttal?
I think you made great points. It is a slight leap of faith. The talent level in Miami, you look at Ajayi, the running back, he's 5 times better than any back that the Jets have. You look at their wide receivers, they are way better than any wide receivers that the Jets have. At some point, that talent should overcome what their deficiencies year to date have been.
So you guys both sticking by your guns. All right. Crossfire number 1. That was a good one. And it shows you guys, if it was easy, if this line were 7, you both would like the dog, right? If this was pick 'em, you'd both like the favorite. That line gets at a point where sometimes it's right. And sometimes there's valid approaches from both sides. I love to hear them because it teaches you how bettors and bookmakers think. And, you know, Matty is a bookmaker and he has massive knowledge behind the counter, but his handicapping, you actually ended up second one year in the Super Contest with a team.
Yeah, 2009, I finished second to some guy named Steve Fezzik.
And where did he end up? Where is he now? He was plucked from obscurity, plucked him from the chorus, as they said on The Sopranos.
Luckier than God in the final week to pull that one out.
Yeah. Fez used to say, Fez was so hungry for attention before me. Tell me if this is right or wrong, Fez, and be honest. You used to listen to John Kelly had 80 people listening to his radio show. I like John, but you could only get it in 4 locations in the city, and you had to be
4 locations.
You had to be there was tinfoil and stuff and all, and it was great because I would listen to the podcast after, which you could hear it. Is you used to call in with crazy statements just to get him to or you would text him crazy stuff to get him to mention you. True or false?
False, because you said both, and that was before texting, and we all know how I struggle with communications. I was the last one to start texting in this town.
I still remember I was actually at a sports book, and I didn't know you yet. And Kelly's doing one of these contests or whatever. And it's Fezzik just texted me and said this.
I would like to see that text because I don't ever remember having texted John Kelly my entire life.
Okay. And again, John is a guy that's been around the block in town, done a lot of radio, and, to me, a really nice guy too. And quite frankly, a lot of people in this industry aren't particularly nice. Okay. It kicks the nice out of you, I guess.
If you play on this basketball team, be ready to play some really good defense, or you'll be riding the bench, though.
Oh, okay. There you go. All right. So, guys, let's talk between crossfires about this week's bonus. I'll be honest. I chastised the college listeners. We had Fez show up because we actually had a flat week last week in the colleges. And we've been growing and growing and growing and flat. And to me, that's just not okay. This is too good for us not to be growing. We're putting too much effort in. And again, when we say good, it's the experts, right? I do my thing, but the experts are the true differentiators, in my opinion. Maybe because I just hear myself talk all the time, so I can't be too impressed by it. But these guys, I learned something. I mean, I've been betting sports every day for literally 33 years. I started betting when I was 14. I've probably had less than 100 days that I haven't bet in that time. And I learn something every time I sit down with these guys. And quite frankly, I learn something every time I sit down with the college guys. I don't know college near as well either. Fez sat in, and guys, he was amazing. For an NFL expert, he was amazing. So if you don't listen to the college, this is the week to sample it, right? And if you don't bet the colleges, then you're not going to listen. But this is the week to sample it. You can go to my Twitter. You can go to Podcast One. You can go to any player, search RJ Bell. You're going to see NFL Dream Preview. Obviously, you can find that. You're listening. And then there's the college one. If you ever want to try it, this is the week. But you guys had us up big again last week. So thus, the coupon continues. NFL Dream 14 this week. We started at 10, 11, 12, 13, now $14. And guys, next week, if we uptick again, we're going to go to 15. This week, though, NFL Dream 14, all one word, all caps, 1 and 4, the numbers, NFL Dream 14. Any NFL pick. Fez has been red hot. What's your record on the year, Fez?
4-2 last week, 66% still.
This season, just play you blind, you'd be safe. Now, listen, that's not usual, but I mean, he is locked in. And let's be candid. You're doing radio early. You're doing a bunch of national stuff. You're doing Sirius, and you're doing this on Wednesday. You're prepped. You're just putting in more time now. It's almost like you're not so much more time, but earlier time, which I think helps you see the board.
Yeah, so I was able to lock in the Cleveland Browns last week, plus 10 with the good number. That was one of the losses. But
the good numbers in the long run, that's what matters. All right, guys, so hey, keep it going. 5-star ratings helps, sharing it helps, whatever you can do, we really appreciate it. And remember, if you don't bet, if you don't like premium picks or don't bet enough to make it worthwhile or whatever, even with the big discount, we love you as a listener. If you tell us you're never going to buy a thing, but you're going to listen, we are happy about that too. So thank you so much. And any help you can give us is much, much, much appreciated.
You're listening to RJ Bell's Dream Preview.
BetDSI.com has been in business for over 20 years paying winners. They're A-plus rated on sportsbook review sites, and you get to use your sports knowledge to make some extra cash. Why sit on all those smarts if you're not going to use them? BetDSI's easy-to-use mobile playing interface makes things simple. Play, win, get paid. BetDSI offers odds on everything football, including live betting and props as games are in action. Plus, BetDSI offers odds on pretty much everything else too, including all major sports, politics, and even reality TV. Use promo code BELL25 to get a $25 free wager just for registering. If you decide to deposit, you will get a 200% bonus match on your money. Here at Podcast One, we play on BetDSI, and let me tell you something. If you want to add a little excitement to the games you're watching, BetDSI is the place to be. So be sure to go to BetDSI.com and use the promo code BELL25 to get a free $25 wager on the house and 200% extra bonus when you deposit. That's BELL25 to get your free wager and start winning today with BetDSI.
Now back to RJ Bell's Dream Preview.
Okay, guys, next game. This is the second crossfire of two. First time we've ever had it. And this is the game. The Panthers at the Bears. Panthers on the road, favored by 3, minus 120. Who went first last time? You, Fez? Matty Holt?
Carolina coming in here with extra rest against a rookie quarterback. Always going to be a help. That John Fox, that team over there always does a great job with that defense. I think they'll be prepared here. And look, the Bears got a little bit fortunate. They got a 34-yard fake punt touchdown pass in order to cover the spread against the Minnesota Vikings at home in Mitch Trubisky's first start of the year. Last week, I was all over the Bears as my top spot, but that was against the 30th ranked offense in terms of yards per play in the Baltimore Ravens in a bad spot for Baltimore. I think this spot makes a lot more sense here for the Carolina Panthers. Extra rest, extra preparation. I do like Mitch Trubisky. I think he's going to be a great quarterback. The Bears just don't have the weaponry.
Great.
I think he's going to be a great quarterback.
Great.
Someday.
Wow.
A top 10 quarterback within 2 years.
So, recapping your like of the Panthers, it's the extra rest with a good coaching staff against a rookie quarterback. Bears having some deceiving scores in their favor.
Yes.
Fez.
Carolina's easy. They're a couple points better than average team. We all agree. Nothing to discuss there. It's the Bears. Think of the narrative of the Bears before the season starts. Ooh, we like these Bears. They were a minus 20 in turnovers last year. They had really good stats. They plus yards per play on the plus. But they got train wrecked by all those turnovers because they had a third-string quarterback in Barkley from USC playing in the Chicago Tundra at the end of the year. Now, this year comes in. We're all optimistic. Boom. 2 wide receiver injuries. Cameron Meredith goes out. Oh, we just lost our wide receivers. Glennon is a total stiff. He's a horrible quarterback. We all pale on the Bears. Well, guess what? Now they have a real quarterback. I watched Trubisky. I love what I see. He's a legitimate starting quarterback. We still have the concern about we're missing our wide receivers. Guess what? John Fox recognizes he doesn't have the wide receivers. So what does he do? He has this punter throwing touchdown passes. He has this running back throwing touchdown passes. He has Trubisky running the ball, dual option, and throwing the ball. And misleading finals, they played Baltimore last Sunday. Baltimore ran a long kickoff and a long punt back for a touchdown. That was a misleading final score. The Bears blew out Baltimore in an upset win. Give me the Bears. They win outright.
All right, boy, I thought those were both good, which probably means I'm passing. Here's what I'll say.
He said the coach has the punter and the running backs throwing touchdowns because they don't have enough weapons.
But here's the thing. If the given is you don't and you act like you do, like what's your choices? One is to start doing some, unconventional stuff because you don't have enough skill position guys or playmakers. That seems a lot better than not. Right? Now, you're right. You wish you had a team that actually had the skill position players, but when you're getting 3.5 almost at home, you're usually not.
And I took the Bears two weeks in a row, so I'm with them on the development of Trubinsky. I'm with them on where he can go. I just think rookie quarterbacks run into walls, and Mitch Trubinsky and the Bears run into one this week.
But walls is usually about fatigue.
No, not just about fatigue, it's about mistakes. So now all of a sudden there's 2 weeks of video on Mitch Trubisky with this offense and what he can do, and you have a really good game planning coach. Carolina was just in the Super Bowl and 15-1 2 years ago. Who could prepare for Mitch Trubisky?
But remember now, Harbaugh with the Ravens with rookie quarterbacks had an amazingly good record coming in with Trubisky, and I think that brings up an interesting point. Mike Lombardi's been talking about this, and I'm a huge fan of his. Belichick's right-hand guy for years, right? Is with the Ringer is what he was talking about, how they're doing a lot of really quick timing passes. Like they're not making him do 3 reads. It's like drop. You got to read or run. And maybe that's not sustainable, but the theory is every game that goes by, you're going to read a little bit better, so you have to run a little bit less. But I think combined with the fact that the Bears' biggest problem has been lack of playmakers, I think that having that unconventional offense just helps a team with a lack of playmakers. I like the Bears a lot more with Trubisky.
And there's one play that I really liked, and the center snapped it over his head into the end zone. This is the exact same play that happened to the Chargers. Philip Rivers just shovels the ball out of the end zone and takes a safety. No problem. Trubisky, heady, just scoops up the ball, rolls out, throws it away down the field like it didn't even faze him. And as far as their home schedule, the Bears have had the hardest home schedule in the NFL. They played Atlanta, they played Pittsburgh, they played Minnesota, all those teams as good as Carolina. They have covered every game year to date.
Good crossfire. I'm passing that game. Okay, guys, we are down the home stretch, and we save the biggest, most actionable picks for last. So to go from here, this sounds super impressive. We've got a sharp money play. We've got a double like, both the boys on the same game, and we've got 3 best bets. First, though, the least interesting game of the week, because there's an injury, no line on it. It's the Bucks. It's the Bills. Matty, as the bookmaker, what are we valuing Jameis, this is off the board because of Winston. Where do you see his value as being?
And there's been a lot of debate about this because there are people on both sides of the fence that are really high or really low on Jameis Winston. In fact, we talked about that Pro Football Focus stat on passes that should be intercepted or shouldn't be. And Jameis Winston has the most throws in the NFL that actually should be intercepted. In the last couple of weeks, we've seen the turnovers and now the injury. But he's still worth something. He's a starting quarterback. He knows the offense. He has a big arm. We made this line around Buffalo -3 with Winston in, and about Buffalo 4.5, 4.75, which is like 4.5 minus 25 with Winston out. So 1.5 to 2 seems
but coming
like
off
low.
coming off 3 though is much more valuable.
So let's say 2,
and maybe even 2.5 though, right? Because
Sure.
3's worth 20 cents,
but he's not worth 3. And for a starting quarterback in the NFL, anything less than 3, it's pretty low.
And remember, Fitzpatrick, if you look at the Pro Football Focus, had the 4th best performance last week. So a good backup, we'd have to say. It's all relative.
Easy to have a good performance when your team trails 31-0, though, against a prevent defense. I will say,
But I think they account for that. I mean, that Pro Football Focus takes pretty much everything in account.
fair enough. I do think that I've got a mistake in my power ratings here. I've got Tampa Bay 0.5 point worse than an average team, so slightly below average. But that really assumes that Winston's going to be 100%. We've seen this enough times. Whenever a quarterback's questionable, if he winds up playing, he's not at 100%. It's unclear whether he's even better than Fitz. I need to lower that power rating.
Pregame.com, that's Steve Fezzik. I'm RJ Bell, the bookmaker. He's on the outside. Bookmakers, we're not, it's a different type of prejudice, but we are prejudiced against bookmakers, Matty.
Even me.
Yeah, I mean, but you the least.
Okay.
Right? You know how
I'm going to start having my own little prejudice against handicappers. But maybe you guys the least.
Okay, I'll
All
take.
right.
Hey, listen, I might not be wrong, actually. All right, we're hitting the home stretch here. First one, I think the biggest conversation of the week, and I think rightfully so. And when I tweeted this out, and by the way, you can follow me on Twitter.
His Twitter handle is @RJ in Vegas.
That's right. Thank you, Stephen A. I tweeted out that, and I mean, this is one of those take a breath and pound your fist. Aaron Rodgers right now is the most valuable player in NFL history. The line, if you just do simple math, and this isn't the way to do it, but it's the starting point, 12.5 points of adjustment from the look ahead line when there was no sense he was injured to him being out and the current line. Now, why is 12.5 not right? Well, one, you're going through Pick'em, and people were struggling with this on Twitter. If you go from -1 to Pick'em to +1, that's 2 ticks. So it's really like mathematically on the number line, it's 2 points, but it's really 1 point. Not to mention Pick'em is the least valuable number there could be because it requires a tie to matter, right? Which I guess is a slightly more valuable with the new overtime rules.
Oh, good catch, yes.
Right, but still not valuable at all. Number 2, there's been a downgrade of Green Bay because of the offensive line and D-back injuries, I think even other than Rodgers. And number 3 is, you've had an upgrade with the Saints. So I think it's fair to say 10 or 10-plus points of adjustment, which, Fez, if you remember back in 2013, we were on ESPN radio talking about this. 10 points or so when he broke his collarbone, and 13 was what it moved.
Yeah, and I moved him 10 myself here, plus 1 extra point for the injuries that you cited. I'm worried I might have moved him too much, though, just because I'm assuming that their backup quarterback Hundley's going to play like Scott Tolzien, and surely he probably can play a little bit better.
Hundley's looked excellent in preseason games, but he looked horrible last week, right? And here's my thought on why Rodgers is. So
what a hard spot last week on the road against the Minnesota Vikings, who we all just agreed earlier is a top 3 defense at home.
Yeah, but you know something? Well, you said it. I didn't agree, but I think I agree. He just said because he said it, everyone agreed. It's like you didn't boo me because of it, right? So you must have agreed. That's like I acquiesced, I think we could say. I think that, well, one, let's get something straight, this is all relative. The old joke is, how much was Joe Montana worth? Oh, about 0.5 point when Steve Young was the backup. So to me, Hundley being slightly below, or at least let's say below average, makes this a bigger number, right? So Brady with Garoppolo, at times, there were people saying 3.5 or 4, right? Which you might think, wow, Aaron Rodgers just
who said 3.5 or 4?
Well, Fez, that's where the market was too at different points.
I may acquiesce, but I'm not agree.
Well, is that you were looking up acquiesce on your phone?
No, I'm looking up how to boo. I'm looking up some boo sounds.
All right, so that's important to realize. But here's the other thing about the most valuable of all time: quarterbacks matter more now than ever. So it's just like Le'Veon Bell, who's one of the top 3 or 4 backs, was worth 0.5 point last year.
Ezekiel Elliott this year,
0.5 point, or maybe a point at the most. We've debated that at length. But if you had the exact same quality running back in 1976, might have been worth 3 points
at least,
because running backs were more important. So you combine Rodgers being the
Barry Sanders, you could have made a case was 4.5, 5 points back when his time with the Detroit Lions.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about that big, but I think in that range.
On his games on artificial turf, not on grass.
Yeah. So Fez was even handicapping back then. Hasn't had a straight job this century, Fez. Went to Northwestern, though, for those wondering about where to send your kids if you want them to be handicappers. It's a situation to me that Rodgers unequivocally, because of how good he is, because his backup's not so good, because of how important quarterbacks are. And one last thing. If you listen to the X's and O's guys, they say, he doesn't throw in rhythm. And because he doesn't throw in rhythm, when he does have an occasional bad game, and that's what they always point to, is he getting too old not to throw in rhythm anymore because just his great skill allowed him to do that, not throw in rhythm and still be excellent. Well, whatever it is, this offensive line stinks. The scheme of the offensive line isn't all that great from what the X's and O's guys say about the Packers. But Rodgers can make it work. It just doesn't matter. He'll run around a little bit. So I think it's going to take a couple of games for Hundley not only to get used to being a starter, but I think the offense play calling is going to have to be so different because they don't have a mobile quarterback. Thus, I think the most valuable player ever. Does anyone disagree with that?
No, I don't disagree that he's the most valuable ever, but I still like this spot for Green Bay.
I think Hundley's mobile, right?
I think Hundley's
he should be able to roll
Yeah, but there's
out.
a different kind of mobile.
If we rated the backups in the NFL, don't you think Hundley's in the top 16?
Yeah, I don't feel like I'm an expert enough to judge that, but it feels like it. I mean, top half, yeah.
And the bad game against Minnesota, let's face it. So I sit in on the Fox National show sometimes. I'm the big intern in college football with the whiteboard.
The most expensive intern.
Yeah, writing like little tidbits. Imagine if I go in thinking I'm going to be the intern here, and all of a sudden RJ's like, Fez, I need to talk
You're hosting
on college football. It's like, yeah, I'd have a bad game too if I didn't know that promotion was coming.
But that brings up an interesting point. It seems like we just said 10 minutes ago that the reason we thought that Trubisky might be dropping off is because they got tape on him. So which one is it? Is it when you get thrown in and it's because I've seen quarterbacks do amazing when they get thrown in and then because of injury and people say, yeah, but wait till they game plan for him. So which one is it? Is it harder to come in cold or is it harder once they got tape on you?
I think it's both. Look, to Fez's point against Fitzpatrick, when you come in and you're down 38-3 or 38-0 and the team's already playing prevent.
It's both. Go ahead.
All right.
Dance the tightrope.
So, I mean, then obviously you're going to perform well because the defense isn't trying hard anymore and you're down there. You know, you're down 31-0. Everyone has good stats against a prevent. And on the other
is there certain types of quarterbacks, though, that are going to do better thrown in and certain types that are going to do better once they have some time to prepare?
I think that Hundley should do better with time to prepare because he was a student at UCLA. He's had over a year in this offense now. So he should be able to grasp it quicker than a guy who would be a rookie.
So almost a better coach with extra time in the NCAA tournament. He uses that time more wisely. Hundley, we expect to use the time more wisely.
Yes.
I agree with that. You know, one thing we're ignoring in this is a vital factor. The New Orleans Saints, they're a precision passing team. Breeze is awesome in a dome. They're going to Green Bay in October, and the weather forecast is not good. The weather forecast calls for some wind and some rain here potentially. That is it got to be worth 3 points. How many times have we seen the Saints fall on their sword when they try to throw the ball in the elements outside?
All right, so this is a double like, and we had to lead with the big story. And Fez, you like the pack. Finish your handicap.
Yeah, I like the pack, and it's all about I don't like the Saints in bad weather or even suspect weather conditions outdoors. I think everything else has been pretty much properly adjusted, and the weather has not been taken into consideration.
Look, I love the weather situation too, and I love, even if it was nice weather, I like fading Drew Brees outside on natural grass anyway. But I always hear about everyone talk about the complexities of a Mike McCarthy offense, and Brett Hundley has been there. This is their guy. This is the heir apparent to Aaron Rodgers. I think you could make a case that Brett Hundley is a top 8 backup in the NFL right now, and you can expect that he should be in there and at least be an average quarterback walking into this game, or slightly below. Not a, we're not talking about Deshaun Kaiser here. I think a lot of advantages here for Green Bay, and we over-adjusted a little bit too much because the New Orleans Saints also looked so impressive last week against the Detroit Lions that you can't help but inflate them this week.
And they had, 3 non-offensive touchdowns last week, right?
They led by 35. It got cut to 7, and it was looking dicey, but the final score says they won by 14.
Okay, and this could have been a pros versus Joes, right? 73% of the tickets on the Saints and 57% of the cash on the Packers. And you gave us 3 super sharp games, Matty, and one of them was the Pack. So I like the Pack too. Actually, this handicap, the weather thing throws it for me, especially if I can get a 6 here, man. I like a 6. But I agree. Double like Packers, sharp play Packers, public Saints. We don't get any Huey on that one. All right, here we go. Game number 13. This is our sharp. Oh, wait a minute. Do we have a sharp money game? No, that was game 11. No, somehow we skipped that game. I made a mistake. So we're going to have to back up one, guys. And this is sharp money, so no reason not to be excited. This is a sharp money game, a little out of order from our plan. Bengals, Steelers. Steelers at home, favored by 5 with some extra juice. Almost 5.5, and the sharp money on this game on the Bengals. Fez, who do you like?
Yeah, I lean to Cincinnati. My number 1 handicap. I'm really worried about Big Ben. After that 5-interception game against Jacksonville, I really thought we'd get his absolute best effort. And then against Kansas City, it was the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, which has been awesome year to date, wound up in winning the game. And you're going to go ahead and cover a 5-point spread. You're going to need Big Ben to have a big game. I don't know what the problem is. He is just not able to move that offense like he did last year.
I completely agree with Fez that the Pittsburgh Steelers offense.
So lean or like?
Lean Cincinnati.
All right, lean.
That the Pittsburgh offense has been as disappointing as any team's offense or defense in the NFL this year, outside of maybe the New England Patriots defense. But the Pittsburgh defense has been amazing. This is a game with the number 1 and number 2 teams in terms of yards per play allowed per pass play in the NFL. So no one's really going to be throwing the ball in this game anyway, too much, you don't figure. And anytime you get into a game with a low total and not a lot of points are expected to be scored, then the points that are out there for you to take with the underdog become much more valuable. Here at 5.5 or 6 points, division familiarity, division opponent, a desperate Cincinnati team who's trying to get their season back on track, catching almost 6 points in a game where we're not expected to hit 40, seems like a steal. Got to lean Bengals.
Here's what confuses me. I agree with everything you guys have said. Steelers defense is better than we expected. I think we're moving towards a top 7, top 5 defense now. Offense, Big Ben, problem. Even with the win last week, didn't look great. Even that Brown touchdown was a tip ball or whatever. Le'Veon Bell, those ramping up. So I don't care if Big Ben. I mean, if Big Ben becomes a John Elway, late career John Elway that won 2 Super Bowls, good defense, good running game, and he can complete a 3rd and 13 if you need it, maybe. Or almost like Peyton Manning was so bad statistically that last year. This Pittsburgh team's still super competitive. So here's what confuses me. The Bengals, we thought, were bottom 5 in the NFL after the first 2 games, right? Fez, you had them pretty low.
Well, let's take a look. I never brought them down that far because their stats were always fairly decent, although I have to admit after the Houston loss week 2, I made a big downgrade. They missed that. The lineman Whitworth that went over to the Rams. Huge O-line problems. How bad is their lineman, RJ? They picked up Mixon. This kid's a stud running back, all right? They already had Bernard. They already had 2 really good running backs. And Mixon and company are running for 3.2 yards per rush. They can't run the ball at all, which makes me, although I lean Bengals, I only like to have one total. I don't see where the points are coming from in this game.
And don't both of these teams rank in the bottom 5 in yards per play on running plays? Yeah, I mean, they have Mixon and Giovanni Bernard and Jeremy Hill, and you go, wow, think of these running backs and Le'Veon Bell on the other side, yet they're both in the bottom 5 in the NFL in yards per play per rush, and on the other side, they're number 1 and number 2 in defending the pass in yards per play. This game just doesn't have enough points not to take the underdog.
I still don't understand. I love the saying, every spread tells a story. Home field is 3. Pittsburgh's a little better than 3 at home, but let's just call it 3. So that means there's 2 points of difference on a neutral. And I know we're coming off of 3, but I mean, what is the line? Pittsburgh -2 against the Bengals on a neutral?
That's right where my power ratings
2.5.
Jeez. So the Bengals, their O-line's still that bad, and they're that good?
Their defense is really good. It's been playing extremely effective. And, part of it is the Bengals with all those weapons, we're forecasting there has to be improvement, but there hasn't been.
Pregame.com. Here we go, guys. We're heading down. We're heading down to 3 best bets. There's 3 of us here. There's 3 best bets. Here's our new best bet theme, sponsoring the show.
Don't know about the future, that's anybody's guess. Ain't no good reason for getting all depressed. Fire up your pad and pencil, I give you a piece of my mind.
Okay, Blossom is not sponsoring the show. I was joking. Best bet time, guys. We're going to start with Matty Holt on the Rams and the Cardinals.
Let's keep the win streak going here. L.A. Rams, a team that I think we were all on last week in a favorable spot. We talked about them 2 weeks entering the red zone 5 times against the Seattle Seahawks, but only coming away with 3 points due to turnovers and unfortunate events there. Last week, we saw them not have those same unfortunate events and have a very positive game against Jacksonville. The one big thing for me here that stands out in this game is familiarity with the London trip. We talked about it earlier this year with the Jacksonville Jaguars, their familiarity with this London trip over the Baltimore Ravens. Jacksonville absolutely waxed Baltimore 44-7. The Rams just went and played the Giants in London last year. They did this trip last year. They have familiarity with this trip, what it takes to go, prepare, get there, deal with the time difference. The Arizona Cardinals have not. I think that there are 3 points separating these teams anyway at this point. Even if this was a neutral field in the U.S., I would like the Rams. Give me the added bonus of familiarity with the London trip. Got to go big, the L.A. Rams.
Okay, interesting. This line has moved. Opened up 2, up to 3.5 -105. How much? I mean, you don't like going through 3 there, obviously.
No, you can't like going through 3, and I played this line once at 3, but I would still say it's a great bet at 3.5. I mean, look, the other game, we haven't seen a lot of great games in London. 20-0, Saints 44-7, Jacksonville. I mean, I think the Rams blow them out. I can't let a half a point talk me off it.
And I don't think it has to talk you off of it. A little line move projection. I'm not sure it's going to happen game day Sunday. I think this is going to leak down to 3. I think you're going to be able to lay 3 on Friday and Saturday.
And is that because of sharp money on Arizona?
I know of one group that likes the dog here, but they're wrong. I like the favorite, and I think Matty nailed it. And just to elaborate on it, when you've been to London, when you go the first time, you get distracted. Oh, let's go see Big Ben. Let's go see the sights. Bring some family members. All a bad idea. And so what happens, Arizona, in my opinion, is making a huge mistake. Oh, let's fly out early. Let's acclimate to London. Get there on Tuesday. Yeah, like climb Everest. Let me go into upper base camp like for 4 days before I try to climb it, and I'm totally gassed. No. Whereas the flip side, the Rams, they go to Jacksonville. So they don't have to go from the West Coast all the way to London. They stay in Jacksonville. They stay normal work routine through Thursday. They're flying to London on Thursday. They don't have anything to see as a tourist because they've been there already. That is the basic strategy, best way to prepare for London, and they're following it to a T.
We didn't prepare for this, but it's 5 extra hours for Arizona and the Rams, right? Than a New York team flying to London. Does that matter? I mean, does that make the effect all the more pronounced? How do we
3
account
extra hours, right, for Arizona?
Well, I mean,
York
I know
team.
LA to New York is 5, right? So Arizona's coming from the south.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Probably at least 4.
The irony is, couldn't they have put this game like in Western Mexico someplace?
Wow. If they cared about this 3 hours, but they have it. There's a game in Mexico this year, isn't there?
You would think this
Patriots
would
or
have
Raiders.
this would have been a better candidate, yes.
Last question. I'm worried if I were betting the Rams on Peterson, because it seems to me you had an Arizona team that came in with high expectations. Fez, you were fairly high on them. And obviously they lost a running back, which was key. And then Carson's looking old. And we bet against Arizona a good bit. But now with Peterson, doesn't he, at least for a few games, give them a shot in the arm?
I don't know. I think it worked one time last week. And
I thought last week was going to be the time it didn't work. I figured he didn't know the offense. How was he going to play well last week?
I agree. I don't think very many people did see it being as productive as it was last week, but I don't know that he's a fit. One of the great things that made David Johnson such a good fit in that offense was his ability to catch the football, which is not a strength of Adrian Peterson. I don't think this is an offense that you can completely recreate on the fly. And let's face it, they almost blew that game last week after having that big lead. I'm not sure that Adrian Peterson is the spark that is suddenly going to make me want to back the Arizona Cardinals in this spot.
2 games to go. Next up, my best bet. You might say, oh, public pounder, this, wise guy, blah, blah, blah. What's it all mean? Well, we try to explain what it means, and it means something. But what best bets mean are very, very explicit. It means we, as bettors here in Las Vegas, and Fez is a full-time professional bettor. Matty is the biggest bookmaker in Vegas. And I bet a lot, right? I run my business too, run pregame, do a lot of media, but I bet a lot. And all these games, we're taking off the rubber band, as they say.
What are you doing? Wise guy don't carry his money in a wallet. Hey, wise guy carries money in a roll.
And I'll be betting the 49ers, my best bet, plus 6.5 in some spots. Listen, Elliott on the field, off the field, I don't really care, to be candid. I mean, because they'll probably run more with them. And if I'm getting 6.5, I don't mind that game slowing down a little bit. But I think the distraction is the issue. Play, not play, play, not play. It's a distraction. Number 2, I think that the Cowboys are the one of only a handful of teams that haven't played since all the hubbub about the commissioner putting out the letter saying stand for the anthem and all of that. And Jerry Jones was front and center going in a way against the players. Now he's saying, I was taking the heat for you. Doesn't change, Joe. So now he said, if you kneel, you're not playing for me. Now, are you telling me there's not one player that the players haven't talked that through? Like, what do we do? Do we all kneel together to show what are you going to do? Not fire all of us, right? Imagine the publicity if they all kneeled together. Now, I'm not saying they're going to do that, but I'm saying it's a discussion. And when they're discussing that, they're not thinking about football. And I'm not saying it's right or wrong to be distracted. I'm just saying I want to make money from their distraction. I'll be very candid about that. And 49ers, we've got our 0-4 or worse trend, 56%. We also have a historic number of close losses. Only team ever to lose 5 in a row by a field goal or less. And they were so tired last week. Road game overtime, road game down big at halftime. And they fought back there. If you fight back there, you fight back anywhere. Shanahan has a plan. Trust the process. So I don't think they're down about being 0 for 6. And because of that, I think 49ers plus 6, really, really, really worth taking off the rubber band. Fast thoughts.
Yeah, I agree strongly. I think the key to betting these winless teams in the NFL is let's do a little bit of a filtering. And let's take out a team like Cleveland that has no quarterback. And maybe we take out any team that has huge locker room problems. We don't have any of those issues. We have an excited team.
A new quarterback here, actually, that we think is an upgrade.
Right. Well, I thought Hogan would work for Cleveland as well. But yes, I think
we're speculators, as Warren Gecko would say.
This looks to be an identical spot that we had with Cleveland. Only Cleveland had lost 19 of their last 20 games. San Francisco is not a historic doormat punching bag. Here's a team with a long history going back of being competitive. They've got what everyone considers to be a very good coach that the team should be improving. I like the play.
I don't know. This is the one thing that I always wonder about when a new quarterback starts, and this is why I wasn't as high on Kevin Hogan as you were last week. Is C.J. Beathard the quarterback of the future for the San Francisco 49ers, and does anybody believe that? Because if he's just some Band-Aid being thrown in on an 0-5 team to be quarterback for a few games.
But I think right now, Kirk Cousins, everyone knows Cousins is going back to Shanahan. We all know that? Well, that seems to be the narrative in the media.
I don't know. I just haven't seen enough of this quarterback yet. I saw him at Iowa where they didn't throw the football very much. I'm not disagreeing with your side, but you pretty much made me stick to the paper, and I wrote lean Dallas, so I'm trying to make the case now.
And if I could listen, if you say, RJ, you were so convincing, I want to recant, I'm fine with that.
I just don't know. I feel like the big unknown to me in this game isn't whether or not Ezekiel Elliott's going to play. It's not whether or not the national anthem thing is still lingering within a certain team's locker room. It's who is this quarterback and what can he do on a football field? Do you think
it's better than a 50% chance it's a downgrade? Because I would play this with Hoyer. I'd play this same game with Hoyer.
Okay, then that's okay.
Yeah. I mean, to me, the upside with the quarterback's a bone. In fact, I'd almost rather have Hoyer because I think I'd get more consistent. Like, I know what I'm getting there. And maybe that's why this is a high variance game. Maybe this is a money line play. Right? That's interesting.
But San Francisco has not been a high variance team.
Actually, they asked me out on Adam, and I gave your answer. I didn't think of it now. Is if you get a tight game late, well, what I said was, listen, this team's lost a ton of close games. If you're in a tight game late, you're probably going to feel a little lack of self-confidence, right? Self-perpetuating. You're not winning these close games. So, but I do think it's a slightly higher variance because the quarterback question mark. All right, guys, one game left. That is the only two-time Super Contest champion. You're going to get his best bet. Steve Fezzik. You can follow him on Twitter at Fezzik Sports, Fezzik. You have any sound of any famous people doing your Twitter?
None.
Okay.
RJ Bell.
I got RJ. All right, here it is. At Fezzik Sports, Fezzik, at Fezzik Sports. Guys, if you want to get wisecracks during the games where he's done less of that on coaches. This is where to do. He's telling you when they should have called timeout. Also, always links to always free stuff, including videos. If you like videos, him and Brad Powers. We also mentioned he's on the college preview Dream Pod this week. Check that out also. All kind of good stuff. Fezzik Sports. By the way, Matty Holt, your Twitter. You got any famous sound?
At Matthew Holt VP.
Do you do it?
I'm going to get UFC Hall of Famer Stephen Bonner to do one tomorrow at the podcast. I will bring it in next week. UFC Hall of Famer.
Do you know
Stephen
him,
Bonner.
Who?
Stephen Bonner, UFC Hall of Famer.
Is there any? Can you get Dana White?
Maybe.
If you get Dana White, we'll use it.
Okay.
All right.
Deal.
Or yeah, for sure. Or if you get Ronda Rousey.
Okay, a UFC Hall of Famer isn't good enough.
I mean, it's good if you're a
Ronda
UFC
will never
nerd.
make the Hall of Fame.
I wouldn't fight the guy. I'll tell you that.
I'd like to see the Ronda Rousey.
Ooh, Fez.
Yeah, Ronda doesn't live here though. That one's trickier.
How about John Anik? You see, who's more famous?
Oh, John and I are friends.
I know.
No problem, John Anik.
Well,
John
if you get John, I'll do it too because
okay.
John's been on my radio show a bunch.
Great guy, very good friend of mine.
How about Joe Rogan? You know Joe Rogan?
Joe and I do not know each other.
That's interesting the way you said Joe and I, like there was a relationship there.
No.
I love that
We've
pod.
done a couple of podcasts together in the past, but I don't know him personally.
You did a pod
but John and I are very good friends.
Okay. Yeah, Rogan. I mean, one of the
Anik's one of the... I was never happier to see anyone get promoted to a spot than I was to see John get his current
He's
spot.
a really nice guy?
He's unbelievably nice, and he worked incredibly hard to get where he is.
That's great to hear it, because he's always been kind with me. Listen, if you listen to us, chances are you've heard Rogan on the pods before, on his pods, but I think one of the best out there. I mean, to me, it's Kroll and him are 1 and 2 in some order, and great stuff. If you like really deep dives, he does like 3 hours of crack. All right, Fez, best bet?
Best bet, Denver Broncos plus 1.5 against the L.A. Chargers. No, they're not the L.A. Chargers. They're still the San Diego Chargers. They have zero home field advantage. I've never done this before. I know they're in their home city, but you know what? It's difficult psychologically to go and play and see all of the visiting teams' jerseys at your stadium to be booed by what's supposed to be your home stadium. Chargers, 6 games this year. You bet the road team, you're 6-0 against the spread. Yes, it's that simple. I think everyone agrees Denver's the slightly better team, and the odds makers keep giving the Chargers 3 for home field, and it's totally undeserved, not to mention the fact that we have 2 situations going on. What are the Chargers adept at? Losing close games. They were losing close games last year. Well, this year, Coach Lynn has been very much criticized for his clock management. Like, there's no reason to expect them suddenly to start winning all these close games. And Denver, we talk about this all this time, public humiliation. They lost as a 13.5, 14-point favorite at Cantor CGT Gaming. That type of loss is enough to get every player's attention. They will have this game absolutely circled. We'll get their 11 in Spinal Tap effort. Broncos win.
Look, I love Fez, but we did not
with all due respect,
we didn't give too much love to the LA Chargers here. We opened this game Denver -2.5, thinking they might bet Denver up to 3, and real sharp dollars wagered moved this line from Denver -2.5 to Chargers -1.5. We didn't give them too much love. The bettors said we didn't give them enough.
But again, we never know. We never know. And you probably have a feel as well as anyone behind the counter, Matty. But is this the real move, or is this they're hoping to get? And again, it's not around key numbers.
So I could tell you what happens on Mondays. We open up our numbers like everybody else does. Sunday nights for college, Monday for NFL. And when the market opens, we take significantly lower limits. Every book does than they would from Wednesday or Thursday on, depending on which book it is. For us, it's Wednesday. But those numbers move lines more than the $100,000 bets we take on weekends because they're only from sharp. The public doesn't come in on Monday. Only sharp people do.
But how do you balance dummying up the game where they can dummy up the game at limits so much cheaper by moving it one way and coming back?
So it's
the other?
Not just us. We also have to monitor the market. So when we're getting hit and we're seeing the market moving as well, we know everyone's getting hit. You just got to go.
I'm pretty confident that sharp money was being based upon no consideration of the factors I'm talking about, but just the fact that Simeon was banged up and the Denver wide receivers got banged up in the game. So it was another factor that was anti-Denver.
But now we're on Wednesday, and if that doesn't look to be as much the case, why not move? Why isn't the line being bet back?
It is being bet back. The line went up. You could have gotten Denver +2. There are no more +2s to be had, and it's leaking downward.
And here's what I'll say, too. This game reminds me almost identically to the Philadelphia Chargers game, which is it didn't make sense that this clearly better team was getting points at the worst home field. I think maybe there's listen, these syndicates are not perfect, right? Obviously, maybe they're just not seeing how not only is there a lack of home field advantage here, but it's also the fact that when you're on the road and you're playing better because you're almost a relief to be on the road, it's skewing your numbers in a way to make you look better because you're playing so well on the road.
It's like the Pulp Fiction song, right? Cess Levy, you never can tell.
And look, last year, remember, we saw the Sharps be really stingy and bet the Cleveland Browns every week. They just wouldn't stop doing it, right? This year, the sharp players have bet the LA Chargers almost every single week of the season.
It was our joke last week. I'd get a text, sharp money on the Jets, sharp money on the Browns. It's another good spot for both teams.
And here's what I'll say to end it is, to me, I think the wise guys being so heavy on the Chargers this year, and I think some of last year, has to do with the fact that they know close losses are coin flips. And seeing all those close losses, this team intrinsically is going to be underrated. But I don't think I think at this line, the Chargers have to be an equal team to a motivated Denver team. And I don't think they are. And that's actually one of my picks with Adam Carolla, Denver Broncos. So I agree with you, Fez, on that one for sure. Hey, guys, great show. An hour 36, so not too crazy long. The boys were awesome. Remember, check out the College Football Dream Preview. You can follow me on Twitter, @RJ in Vegas. I'll talk to you there.
Thanks for listening to RJ Bell's Dream Preview. Catch the Wiseguy Roundtable each week. College football released on Wednesday, NFL on Thursday. Don't miss any winners. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen. Visit podcastone.com and download the Podcast One app. Have a question for RJ? You can contact him directly on Twitter @RJ in Vegas. Live the dream with us each week.
Hey, my name is James Petrogallo.
I'm Jimmy Wissman.
Please join us every single Tuesday for Crime in Sports.
So fun.
You like sports?
You don't have to.
Let's just set up a context and find out what an idiot did wrong. What do you say?
I'm in.
We're going to do that each and every week. We take an athlete, we break him down, we make fun of everything he's ever done.
Yeah. But in order to do that, we have to build up and tell you all about their career and get you to what, James? To grace.
And then watch them fall from grace as they inevitably do. Join us. Big criminals, small criminals, sports you've never heard of. Doesn't matter. It's the crime. It's the comedy. It's such a good time. Join us every Tuesday for Crime in Sports.
You can join us every Tuesday at podcast1.com, the Podcast One app, or subscribe on all Apple products.
Find us every Tuesday and laugh at people.
Hi there, my name is Susie Schuster.
And I'm Rich Eisen.
We're teaming up once again in the studio with our new podcast, Not Just Sports, with Susie Schuster and Rich Eisen on Podcast One Sports.
In case you're wondering what this show's about, sometimes we're not just sports.
Right.
Do you see what I'm saying?
And that we actually like being in each other's
We
company
do.
enough to work together
I
and
think
have
so.
3 kids.
That's why we haven't spent enough time together that we're sitting here at Podcast One. So we're sportscasters and we're parents, so we'll talk sports and maybe parental guidance will be suggested every now and then.
I would hope so, because this is not an X-rated podcast.
No,
this
that's
is a
correct.
family-friendly podcast.
It is exactly that. So we're just going to be hanging out, talking sports and other stuff.
And I will try to educate you on all things in the NFL, because,
Thank
of
you.
course, behind every great man is a greater woman.
That's correct.
There you go.
Join us every Wednesday exclusively on Podcast One.
Subscribe today if you know is good for you on Apple Podcasts or at podcast1.com, or download it on the new Podcast One app.